Hello, and welcome to Marathon Swim Stories, where we explore the human side of the superhuman feats of endurance swimmers and those who support them. I'm marathon swimmer and coach Shannon Keegan. In today's episode, I caught up with Gia just a few weeks before she tackles 20 bridges around Manhattan. She told us a little bit about some of the swimming that she's been doing in various spots around South Korea, but we spent a big chunk of this episode exploring some of the inevitable feelings of doubt that crop up as your swim date starts getting closer and closer. And Gia gave me the option to cut some of those pieces out. And the more I thought about it, it was really raw and real and honest. And this is the human side of the superhuman feats of endurance swimmers. So it's all there. And I encourage you, before jumping to judgment, to be curious about your own thoughts. Best of luck to Gia on her travels. I hope that everything goes smoothly so that she's able to make it to the start of her swim on August 22nd. And then I hope we get to watch her swim all the way around Manhattan. I hope you enjoy this episode. Gia, how are you? Where are you in the world? And what's your swim date? It's coming up fast, isn't it?
It's coming up so fast. So the swim date is Sunday, August 22nd.
Okay. All right.
And
A couple of weeks out.
yeah, and I'm in Seoul, Korea,
Wow.
which is in the northwest part of the country, whereas
Okay.
I spent most of my time in the southeast. So,
Okay.
yeah, I'm here for a little over 2 weeks, and because I'm here for a short amount of time, I moved on up to some nice hotel.
Nice.
Yeah, the last time I was in a rooftop, it was nice in its own way, but I was crouched in the dark and like it
Yeah,
looks pretty fancy in the background.
it does look fancy. What are you doing for training these days? Oh, wait,
Yeah,
maybe
for sure.
recap. Let's recap what you've done up until now, and then you can tell us what you're doing right now.
Okay, yeah. So in the last leg of my time in Busan, I was and I really thought about this before I got on because I wasn't approaching things as training anymore because it was sort of like I was going back and forth, but I just swam every single chance that I could get. And as I
Nice.
told you, there was a time period when my shoulder started hurting and it hurt for a while. And then
Mm.
I kind of swam through it. Then I looked up all this stuff online and people were telling me, why don't you just go to a doctor? And here, medical care is actually easy to get, but I didn't know who to go to. But then it did go away when I backed off of swimming.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
once I started creeping back up, that coincided with kind of over 2 weeks that I was in Haeundae, which is kind of like a 1.5 kilometer long beach, which I didn't even really look up until it's almost kind of like I felt like a part of this was out of my control at this point. Every decision led me to the place and to put myself next to the beach. And then beyond that, I sort of didn't see a productivity anymore in calculating things and thinking, okay, I have to hit this mark because I wasn't going to. But
Hmm.
it's nice to see that I probably swam 5 or 6 kilometers, maybe 5 or 6 times a week
Nice.
in the
Wow.
ocean. And sometimes it was really very kind of they have these lines set up that are farther out than they seem because from the hotel I could see a little sliver of the ocean and I could see, oh, today's a frothy day, or wow, today I can see to the bottom and it's really nice. um, and so you're still above your head, and but like the waves kind of break right there, and at first I thought this is
Yeah. Yeah.
ridiculous. Why don't I just go beyond the line and just swim right next to the line or something like that? And sometimes the lifeguards, it also depends. There's so many of them and they station them in the water. They even have these guards in these thick old school wetsuits just sitting there. And some
Wow.
of them, yeah, some of them actually mutter under their breath and they're like, you can do it, like keep going. And others are like, get back in and don't go where your feet don't touch. It's just they have different ideas of
Hmm.
what to do. Um, But yeah, so I was swimming right there, and when I started thinking this is no way to swim, sometimes when the waves were, then I thought this is kind of what the Battery will be like and what the Hudson will be like, and it's definitely, actually I was glad to have that. And it made me think of a lot of swimmers in the community who talk about, I like when it's sporty out because
Yeah.
you feel almost like the water is doing things for you and moving
Mm,
you into rhythm. I sensed that for the first time ever, truly, where I was kind of like, this makes me feel like I'm really out there swimming, you know?
nice. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
And I mean, your background is a lot of pool, lap swimming, right? So it's good to that have some good extended time in the ocean. It's great.
yeah. The other two major swimming things that I did before I got to Haeundae, I went to this area called Ulsan, which is kind of like an hour north of Busan, but it takes so long to get there without a car. And it's just because you have to take a train, then a local bus that comes once every 45 minutes.
Oh, wow.
That whole week, it was what they call Changma, and it's kind of like a monsoon season. So
Mm.
it was just raining every day, and I preferred that because honestly, the sun was gone. And I went. A lot of people who don't know the area were like, it's just an industrial city where
Mm.
it's just, I don't know if you're going to find a nice place, but they had the nicest beach. And there was a swim group
Oh,
that,
wow.
yeah, that I found on Instagram. And I only got on Instagram. That was a part of the reason to look for Korean hashtags. And one lady who actually wrote back to me early on, I think I talked about her. I never ended up meeting with her.
Oh, no.
Yeah, there was another beach called Songdo, which was south in the southern end of Busan. So I swam there many times also. And I didn't really post it a lot on social media because there I actually swam out farther because they
Mm.
have these fixtures in the ocean that at first I thought those are so cheesy. But once I was swimming, I was like, this is awesome for open water swimmers because you really are out there, but you can just see to the next big
Mm.
structure. And so
Hmm.
you don't have to
Interesting.
fight very much.
Huh.
But I'm realizing I'm kind of going off on tangents, but it reminded me of the main spots where I've been swimming.
Hmm.
So as the season kicked up, so here summer is really, June is a great time because to us that's summer, but
Mm.
nobody's vacationing till mid to late July.
Oh,
Yeah, Korea is very tight about its vacations. So if people get vacation, it's really all crowded into this one,
interesting.
impacted in the worst, rainiest, hottest, most miserable times of the year.
Oh,
Uh,
geez.
yeah, and I noticed that, and I remarked upon that to some Korean people, and they just cackled, saying that they totally get it. But there, so what happened as the season kicked up is then the lines came out, and it was interesting because I remember thinking, wow, I thought that Korean beaches were going to be so restrictive, but I can just go out there and no one cares. But then came the lifeguards, and then came all this other stuff, and this big boat that I think it's this big red boat that looks inflated, but it's not. It's like a
Mm.
real metal, humongous, it looks like a mini tanker, but
Huh.
it moves like a torpedo. It's just awful. It goes so fast, and it'll go between those statues because I remember seeing the statues and being like, well, no boat is gonna come in here. But I would see this thing and it was sporadic. That was the worst part. It would just anytime. And sometimes when people weren't there and it was crappy weather, the guy who runs the boat would just go joyriding by himself, just on a whim in front
Oh,
of her. Yeah,
so okay, so
yeah.
just unsafe boating activity.
Then I
So
swam along the line also there, and it
yeah.
gets deep really fast, but it's really clear. So
Hmm,
there
cool.
I also did something similar where maybe I was swimming 2 to 3 miles, not 3 to 4, a few times a week. And that was when
Hmm.
my shoulder was still kind of weird, unfortunately.
Hmm.
And then one of the last times I swam there, there was just kind of trash in the water, like plastic, you know what I mean? Like junk
Yeah.
food wrappers. And it made me feel really, and the water wasn't clear anymore. And the lifeguards were blowing their whistles. So that was kind of the last time that I swam there. So I felt like, oh, the season for that place is over. And I met groups there, or I encountered groups. So there would be groups of people. They'd have their wetsuits and snorkels and what else? Fins on with all their equipment, and they weren't very open or friendly. Because
Interesting.
yeah, I would definitely stop in my tracks and be like, "Hello, hello, like how are you?" And they would just say like, at best, some people didn't stop. Maybe they didn't hear me, but once on one occasion, two people did stop, and the looks on their faces just looked like, who are you? You're weird, you know? And so I told this other group that. So now the other group was the opposite. And I really am sorry I didn't meet the woman who, because we
Yeah,
kept saying
connected
we'd
you.
have to meet.
Yeah.
Yeah, then I would see a social media post where she's like, I'm here, and I think she probably would say the same of me, like, oh, now she's on this random island. I took a lot of side trips too. So then when I got to this Ursan group, there were like, I don't know, 30 people who only know each other through swimming, and
Huh.
they meet every day at 5:50 a.m.
Wow.
Um, so the first day I put myself right on in their pictures, there's a tiny, I don't know if you'd call it an isthmus,
Is this, yeah.
but kind of there's a big river that empties into the ocean on one side, and then on the other side is the beach, and then there's a tiny sliver of sand. It just looks fake. And then
Hmm.
there's a cute little island with bursting with vegetation, and right at the doorway of right before the island there's this octagonal building that is the Lifeguards Building.
Okay.
And lifeguards here are sort of almost like a blend of Coast Guards, 911. In fact, they call themselves 119,
Huh.
and 119 is 911 in Korea.
Okay.
So they're specially trained water rescue. It's this whole other tribe of people, but their station is there. So in the pictures, I would see that structure and the island, and I thought, I have to go. That looks so outlandish and different. So I got a hotel right there. And so
Hmm.
I finally told the guy, I was like, I'm here, I'm coming. I'm gonna spend 3 days there. And my plan was, okay, I'm working overnight, and I've had trouble sleeping in the day. Because guess what? I end up doing stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I thought this is perfect because everyone's telling me Ulsan is just kind of like a industrial place where people just go to work.
Hmm.
So all these people work, and I will work through the night, swim, and then sleep because I won't
Yeah.
have anything to do.
Right.
And
Ha
it
ha
didn't
ha.
exactly work out that way. Yeah, because even the first day, so I remember I was wrapping up work and the sun was coming up, and I heard my voice. It was just like Chongjia, Chongjia, like shouting in Korean my name. And I looked out the balcony and he's there waving, like, come on, like, come down.
Wow.
Uh, so they'll do these stretches. And these folks, I'd say, are mostly in their 40s and 50s, and they're people who have kids, they're working people, and every single day they don't take a break, which I think is, so the name of their group stands for the first syllable of people crazy for swimming.
Hmm.
And it's a word kind of stronger than crazy, maybe like lunatics for swimming or psycho
Okay.
for swimming. They really, it reminded me the most, that vibe of the the swimming scene that I know, like the swimming community, where
Hmm.
it just is people's lives. It's changed
Hmm.
people's lives. People have met each other just because of it. Um, and especially with coronavirus and traveling mostly alone and being back and forth, that was one of the main times on this whole trip where I just felt like, oh my God, I suddenly met 30 people organically because thanks to swimming.
Thanks
In
to swimming, yeah.
Yeah, and they were all later we left. So I was saying how I couldn't sleep. So after maybe the second morning that I swam, um, the wife of one of the main guys who coordinates everyone texted me, and she was just I was lying down. By then it was 11, which is
Yeah.
already late because we get out of the water at like, I don't know, 8, or and I was lying down, and and she just said, "Oh, I'll come by and get you at 11."
So
Because
you told them you couldn't sleep, and they're like, okay, we'll give you something to do then.
I didn't tell them that, because I did tell everybody that I was working overnight, and they were like, "Oh, wow." But I think to Koreans, they're just like, "Okay, but we're gonna do this other." They didn't. So she said some time freed up at work that I didn't expect, so I'll just come and get you. And at first I didn't read it that way. Then I was like, wait, you're coming to get me? So she brought me all around.
Wow.
And then we got back at 4 p.m. And she was like, well, rest up and I will too. And I'll come back at 6. I'll come back at 6 and get you for dinner. And then so what happened was we went out to dinner, and then people were having drinks. And that was maybe the one time that I've had a, a truly social time.
Wow.
And then I logged back onto work,
Oh
and
gosh.
yeah, um,
So you're pretty sleep deprived after that week.
yeah, I was sleep deprived, but once you get in the water, many times I've thought this is really not the way to, I mean, like, this is a little extreme, and
Hmm.
it can't be too good for my health. But then once I got in the water, I would just feel so great, you
Yeah.
know? Um, and I extended that trip by one day. So I just didn't even want to leave, you know?
Yeah. That sounds pretty fun. Yeah.
Yeah. And so even at that point, um, I don't know if I'd say my shoulder was hurting,
Mm.
but I was fearful that it would hurt, if that makes
Mm.
sense.
Hmm. Yeah.
And um, so that was like a huge boost of something. Just
Yeah.
so that was another main place that I trained.
Did you do
And
any
then
when your shoulder was bothering you? Were you doing any kind of like preventative stretching or exercises or anything to kind of help with that?
I think
Or
stretching, period. And I just became so aware of it, which at first didn't help,
mm,
because I thought, in my stroke, I'm a big believer of repetition causes a lot of this stuff. And
totally, yeah,
so
and
when
and
you said,
quick increases in mileage also.
oh, I believe
Not
me,
that
I
that's
got an earful from like Janine, and she also said, welcome to 40, because I will be on September 9th. And then I'm still sort of like, that goes in through one ear and it goes so far, but then I'm like, what am I gonna do? Which I'm sure is frustrating to people who know better. Um, but it started working. At first, I felt like I was just relearning to swim, and I thought, this is a joke. What am I doing? But actually, it started turning around when in that quick email, you were like, just remember, make sure when you're pulling that your arm is under you.
Makes
And
a big difference.
it made almost all the difference,
Yeah.
because instead of thinking of other parts of the stroke and how you should be,
Hmm.
it just, for me, that kind of resolved everything else.
Good.
Because
Yeah,
when
remember that.
and it made me realize how
Mm,
truly unbalanced I am in how I do it, and how much more confidently and strongly I'll extend my right. And what's weird is I think it comes from fear of pain, or some kind of like a physical fear
mm,
and I've talked to several people about this, like Jennifer Snyder, and she said she does it. I think even Bridget Hobart said she does something similar, where she has to consciously, like, she doesn't open up as much on her left side.
mm.
But what's funny is that only hurts you more.
Yeah.
And I found that when I made sure to get to a point where I could extend my left arm properly
Hmm.
when I'm supposed to be gliding,
Hmm.
it felt good.
Yeah.
It feels like you're stretching.
Yeah.
And another thing is, there's Lynn Anderson, who swims a lot with John Hughes. She's kind of like in the triathlete swimmers community.
Hmm.
Once when we were camping on Lake George and swimming out there, she mentioned there's a point in the stroke where you really actually have to relax.
Mm.
And oddly, that's something I just felt intuitively when I'd started doing more backstroke. This is years ago, where it's like you feel this point where any amount of pulling isn't actually helping. It's sort of like when they teach people to fall, stunt people to fall. If you're all locked up, you'll just hurt yourself more. And
Mm-hmm.
to me, it's counterintuitive, but I think it's been really mental for me where I'm like, okay, um, in this swim, my thoughts will be really minimal, I think, or thoughts will run through, but any mantra is really, it's really going to be keep your arm under you and rotate your body instead of pulling your arm,
Yeah.
and make sure not to have like a floppy wrist, because I have
Yeah.
this weird thing where my arm is just floppy,
Yeah.
and it's just like that. It's going to get snapped around in the waters.
Yeah.
Um,
I gave Q when I did Tahoe back in July. My crew had cues for every feed and all
uh-huh.
just different physical like stroke cues, but it was perfect because your mind kind of wanders whatever, but it was helped me like recenter every time back to your stroke, and um I find it to be extremely helpful.
Awesome. And congratulations, by the way,
Oh,
because
thanks.
I just see all these big swims happening, and it's just
It's tis
really
this, yeah,
exciting.
everyone's getting back out there.
Yeah,
It's
yeah. I
great to
just see
see.
that, and I can feel it even from far away.
Hmm.
It's just very great.
Yeah,
Uh,
and yours is coming up. So what was, you said you were about to tell me, I think, about another before I interrupted you for your preventative anything, but what other were there other places you were swimming before Seoul?
there's one other place. So I went to kind of a landlocked city called Gwangju, and the
Mm-hmm.
whole thing with that was in addition to swimming, I've been just looking into my dad's history because I'm trying to write about his story. And he had this best friend, and that friend, we just lost his contact information. So this whole time I've also been looking for him. So I went down there to go on live radio. They have kind of a commuter radio station, and I looked up, there's this one pool where that was actually the site of the 2019 FINA championships.
Mm.
So I knew there's a gigantic pool at Nambu University. And it's weird because you can look online, but it's really not reliable, not even on their website.
Hmm.
And day to day, things have been changing here actually. So I didn't know if they would be open. Um, and I texted with this newspaper editor who I was also going to meet with. And he was like, I think things are closed now. And for some reason, I took my swimming stuff out of my, because the last time I had been in Gwangju, I brought all my swim stuff. Like it weighs so much, but I mean, I brought the stuff and definitely didn't have any opportunity to swim.
Mm-hmm.
So I just took out my swim stuff, which is the dumbest thing. And
Always have
like
your swimsuit.
it's like when you don't bring an umbrella, then it definitely rains. And
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
exactly what happened. Because that early morning, I woke up at 5 and I got there at by 8 a.m. or something. And right there was an early morning text from him. And he's like, actually, I called for you once it was, business hours, and they are open. So I thought, oh my God, I don't even care what I buy. I My mind started racing. I was like, can I go in my underwear? Do I have underwear that I can you believe that? And there's actually a swimming store. So on the map, it did say there was a swimming store there, like a college swim store.
Hmm.
So I can't believe my luck. This is perfect because I'm gonna have to also get goggles and a cap. But when I went to the site of the map, um, it wasn't there, and there were just
Oh
these
no.
students who college students look like they're 12, and they're cigarettes. I was like, where's is there swimming? They definitely don't look like they've ever swum at all.
Right.
But they knew. They were just like, well, I think it's actually in the pool where the pool is.
Oh, interesting. Huh.
So I got to this pool and it was so hot. I can't explain. Maybe I can explain because I know that the Pacific Northwest had some freak heat wave and New York City's been hot, but it's this humid heat also, so humid. And I was wearing this cotton dress kind of, it was actually drenched. Do you know how people say drenched in sweat? But I could have wrung it out. It was scary.
Wow.
Yeah, I was getting scared, and my hair looked wet, and I just looked just absolutely in a bad condition. And finally, I found this huge aquatic complex. It looks like a ball game stadium, like
Oh,
a
wow.
it just from it's kind of like, and it doesn't really have windows.
Uh-huh.
Um, and I thought, okay, I can take a left and go up this ramp, or I can take a right. And unfortunately, I took a left, and it was weird because I could just smell wafts of chlorine and hear little splashing. But
Yeah.
I was looking and I couldn't really. They were kind of semi windows, like little slivers of glass, and I thought I could see water. And but then when I went around the back, there was just absolutely nothing, and just a huge dead parking lot with one gigantic tour bus, and the
Oh,
bus
wow.
driver sleeping in the luggage hold. He was just like napping. And then storm clouds were brewing, but it teased rain, but it never actually rained.
Oh,
But it
wow.
was just, I was like, this is crazy. And I came all the way around and I thought, am I seriously gonna give up? I mean, I'm here, I've
Right.
heard it's open, but I really was gonna give up because by that time I just was like, this is not happening. I don't know how to get in here. And I think I went to this rail and I just was like, oh, and then I looked and I just saw people going in and out. And it was simply downstairs full circle from when I started. So had I taken a right instead,
Yeah.
and it was pretty lively. It wasn't crowded in a sense of it felt safe, but people were using it.
Mhm.
And I found the swim shop, which is like the swim shop, and made friends with the lady. And one thing I appreciated about her is I think I don't know if it's unique to Korea, but I really looked, she could have treated me differently. She could
Mhm.
have just been like, but of course I bought up a bunch of stuff at her store and I
Mhm.
went swimming. But it was the only time in the summer, the first time that I got into a swimming pool.
Mhm.
And so I didn't have the um, buoyancy of the salt water.
Oh, mhm.
And it didn't make a difference to me. I didn't feel heavy or anything. If anything, it was amazing to be in actually a structured place, uh,
Yeah.
where I could, and it's 25 meters, not yards, which
Mhm.
actually I think is a big difference. So I swam there for a while, didn't count, and I went back again. I found my dad's best friend, so I
Oh, yeah,
extended
that's
my
right.
stay,
That's so
which
cool.
is crazy. And then I came back and swam again. And I extended my stay one more hotel night. So I've done crazy things like that where I get to a point where someone else would just be like, well, it's not worth paying. I don't even want to say how much I had to pay for a suit that contains polyurethane. And
Jeez.
I found out later.
Yeah.
He was like, when you put this on, make sure you lather with hot water and soap first so you can get it on. But it wasn't that bad. It wasn't that bad. Um, but or so when I went to the pool the second time, I just arrived right at the point where they just have cleaning for an hour.
Oh, wow.
And
Jeez.
I sat there and I was like, no, I'm not gonna just. And I even begged them. I said, let me just swim until that happens. So I seriously swam 9 minutes. I swam
Oh, no.
And so then I came out and I was gonna be like, that's that. What are you gonna do? Spend another night in a hotel and just, but I did do that. And I'm glad I did. And that day I swam over 4K in the pool.
Nice.
Um,
Wow.
yeah, and that was a confidence booster for me. For most people attempting a swim like this, it would be a regular workout. But for me to be able to count, it just made me feel a lot better.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I didn't have a lot of shoulder pain during or after.
Good.
And the whole time I was thinking about the stroke. So it was a huge confidence booster where I actually felt like I worked out,
Mhm.
which is a little, actually, it makes sense now saying it since I didn't count or calculate. Because it's not like I wasn't working out when I was in the water,
Right.
out in the open water. But
Yeah.
this made me feel like, oh, I have been doing something.
Yeah.
Does it
Yeah.
make sense?
Yeah, yeah.
Like all that stuff counted, where to me it felt almost like frolicking, but I was swimming
Mm.
the whole time.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I could see, I see like
Yeah.
with your path, like having come from being a pool swimmer, like kind of reassessing from a
Mhm.
foundation that you're familiar.
Mhm. So that was the other major swim experience. Then when I came back to the ocean front and then swam there pretty regularly. because at first I thought, oh, I'll swim um, in other places. I thought there might be jellyfish or trash, and but it was just great to be able to swim there
Nice.
only, yeah,
Hmm.
till the end of my time there. So,
Cool. I feel like I
yeah.
want a map of Korea with like all of the
Oh
little
yeah.
dots for all of the places that you swam so I can put it on your journey page.
Oh, I should really do that, and I
It's kind of
really,
neat.
yeah, I thought of people so much, and I thought I really want people to know these places at the same time. Yeah, I wanted others to be able to enjoy it. I thought about my swim friends a lot and how I
Hmm.
wish they could be in this place. I think
Yeah.
Korea is like really, really underrated for not just for its nature, but for its swimming opportunities. It's
Mm-hmm.
absolutely a swimming country. Um, it's just I can't even explain. The water was actually really cold. That's another thing. It was
Mm.
I think it was 62
Nice. That sounds refreshing
until
to me right now.
yeah, but it was definitely kinda not that I didn't enjoy getting into it, but kinda you have to sort of think it's gonna be cold when you
Right.
first get in.
Right. Yeah. I gotta get going.
Yeah,
And yeah, it takes a minute
so
to like get comfortable on 62.
yeah, like, after that side trip, I got back and it was late afternoon. By the time I unpacked everything, the sun was even starting to go down. I think it was 6 PM or something, and but I could see outside and the water looked really good.
Mm-hmm.
But I had maybe a couple of hours to go before work
Oh,
or
geez.
3 hours, so I could have that should have been when I slept.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I remember thinking, "It's right there." And so when I walked in, the water was suddenly like 74.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it went from consistently being 62, so I thought, "Oh, it's just gonna be like this." And because it had been hot all that time too.
Mm-hmm.
And it just went to this other level. So when
Interesting.
I went in with that feeling of like, just
Hmm.
and then it was just mild, I think
Comfortable.
that really helped me. Yeah, I was so comfortable, almost warm, and then
Hmm.
the sun was setting, and it was so clear that even as the water got into that dark, dark teal color, I could still see the ridges in the sand.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and that's those are the times when I'm like, "Oh, I wish someone else was here so I can just, like,
Share.
reflect off of" yeah, so you can
Yeah.
share it.
Hmm.
Um, and, I just swam until the sun actually set and it was dark. It was just so nice.
That sounds cool.
Um, yeah, so that was another turning point in, swimming alone because really I have been mostly out there just by myself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So now you're in Seoul for
Yeah,
the next 2 weeks, you said? Till you
um,
leave?
yeah, even maybe a little under 2 weeks at this
Okay.
point because I leave
Yeah.
on yep, I leave on the 16th.
Okay. Yeah.
So when I first got here, all the pools here they have these famous Riverside pools that I really wanted to see. And with that too, they didn't really have clear up to date information. So I walked in this intense heat that's even more than before because it's like urban heat.
Oh,
I
yeah, yeah.
walked over the huge river and went and the pool was just all dried out. It was just the most depressing thing because
Oh, geez.
coronavirus has ticked up a bit.
Yeah.
And then my cousin called this other pool, the Olympic Stadium pool from the
Mm-hmm.
1988 Olympics. And he said, oh, only members can go there. I might still show up in person and
Mm-hmm.
because you never know and be like, I'll pay whatever for a one time fee. But that's when I started getting a little bit like, okay, I guess I'm just not gonna go in water at all
Mm-hmm.
until 2 days before my swim. I just was taking that in, right? And because of that, it provoked me to run. And I made kind of an oversharing post that maybe I may delete after it's been seen and whatever, because I don't know if it really belongs up there. But I hate running, and I think I've said that I hate it so much, and but it felt good. So I was going over the river, and when there are things to kind of like a river, I mean a bridge to cross,
Mm-hmm.
felt kind of cool. But I alternated between feeling like, hey, I'm actually working out and this is actually, it's really good for my body, um, with these weird thoughts. There's an actual voice. And the reason this has never happened to me before, it was a big revelation, is that I would only have the feelings, but it was self-criticism.
Mm.
But this time I heard it as like a voice. Um, when people say voice, I thought it was kind of metaphorical. It was halfway between an actual voice, but like actual words being said, if that makes sense, instead of thoughts and feelings. But it was just like, you poser, like actual words
Oh,
in
wow.
my head, like this weird stream that I hadn't felt or had happened to me. So it
Hmm.
really kind of blindsided me. And I think it was everything I've been trying to deny, which is
Yeah.
I'm probably insufficient. I am insufficiently prepared for this by other people's standards.
But
And
what about your standards? Who cares about other people?
exactly. But at the same time, yeah, I realized, oh, I'm also human. So I guess I do care what people think. And what's crazy is a lot of people probably aren't thinking about, maybe they'll be my friends maybe pulling for me and stuff like that. But day to day, I'm the one who's thinking about it, right? Like nobody's
Hmm.
there really. They have better things to do than to assess my chances. And uh, something that I did want to talk about that I think is really real though is like that nobody wants to admit, um, is, well, first it was in terms of like I was projecting it onto others. And these are mythical others. They're not specific people, right?
Okay.
But I was like, oh, if I make it, I'll get all the, outpouring and whatever. And then if I don't, people will be happy. Like there will be like a
Oh. Hmm.
schadenfreude.
Interesting.
Yeah. And then I thought, where is that coming from?
Yeah.
Um, and I realized this is really hard to admit, um, but that I think all people have a little bit of that, maybe. But then I thought, or do I have it? And I had to
Mm.
question that. But it's not anything specific, but just kind of like, I think if people DNF, it makes me feel better about myself,
Hmm.
you know, like that, oh, they're human too. Like they can
Oh.
as well.
Huh.
And and also there is an element of when it comes down to it, we're all at the mercy of nature, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So then I thought, oh my God, maybe nobody thinks this way and people only root for each other. But I've also heard the way people talk about each other, not necessarily saying bad things about people, but just sort of sizing people up and being like, they're not really, prepared. And it's,
Mm.
I think that sort of, I made a leap from that kind of thing that I've seen in the competitive areas of this community to me, that people are doing that about me.
Hmm.
Um, but then I thought, no, they're not, because
Yeah.
like I'm not even in that league, and no one is probably out there doing that. And also, it shouldn't matter. So it was really like, it's also every other aspect of my life. Just feeling like I always bite off more than I can chew, and
Mm-hmm.
then I just try to get away with it. And so
Yeah.
there's a lot of like these thoughts of like you don't deserve it, and I
Right.
think it's because of that that I felt like, oh, if I don't make it, everyone's just going to be like, they might not say it to my face, but this everyone is going to be like, she's ridiculous, like what did she expect,
Hmm.
like what did she expect doing. And a few times people have said to me over the past 2 years that I've been planning to do this, um, is there a reason why you're doing it now? Like,
Hmm.
it's always going to be there. Like the river, do you have to do it before? And then I said like, oh, it's because my one vanity is I want to do it before I'm 40,
Mm.
or, but the real reason is, um, time won't be there again.
Yeah.
And that's so real to me. Whereas to someone else, they're like, yeah, but really think about, giving yourself the best chance possible and going
Hmm.
into it like being 110% sure you're gonna that you're as trained as you can be, that you're as ready.
Mm-hmm.
Like, wait until you don't have all this other stuff going on. but I thought about it. I was like, I may never not have, I may never be living in a way that is more focused
Right.
and,
And there's
um,
people that are more focused, whatever
yeah.
focus is, but like that train a whole bunch and then they'll still get pulled because of, like you said, there's natural circumstances. I don't know. I mean, I appreciate all of your introspection on the topic. It's very near and dear to my heart. But uh, I I would encourage you to listen to Andy Truscott's story, which I think just came out
Mhm.
last week, and Graham Schlachter, which was last year. And there's other ones too. Those are the two that jump to my top of my head. But
Mhm.
I think it for me and my swimming, especially, I felt like this year going into Tahoe, I was having all the same thoughts, like who do I think I am? And I don't. Yeah, I think that's natural, getting closer and closer to the date. But what I really started to do was to trust the process that I used, because I had done all the things that I could do and that were in my power. And I knew that the day that was my swim day, I was going to do the best that I could.
Mhm.
And the other thing I guess I try to do is not let myself envision the quitting. You envision the finishing. And if you
Mhm.
hold on to that, I feel like you can push through
Yeah.
just about anything. But
Yeah.
if you start letting yourself be like, oh, what would it be like if I got on the boat? And I've seen that before, or, you start to see yourself, then you're totally out of luck. But
Yeah.
there, it's such a mental game. I feel like there's
Yeah.
people that are super trained and they can still get stuck in a bad place and get out in the middle of a swim. And there's people that can
Yeah.
be super well trained and they can try to physically push through and still get pulled because of Mother
Right.
Nature, hypothermia, or whatever. So I guess
Right.
at the end of the day, just trust that the process that you've put in
Yeah.
is going to be the process that carries you to see it through to completion. That would be my
Yeah.
advice.
Thank you. And all the other, and especially I just really looked at that voice and those thoughts and looked at the extra stuff in there that
Mm-hmm.
isn't normal, to be honest with you.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that part of you don't deserve it. And those things, not all people think that way. And
Right.
this is something I've worked through with my therapist. And somewhere along the line, I won't get too much into it, but I definitely, my coping mechanisms or the way that I work apparently is to kind of like throw myself under the bus and make it into a normative judgment where it's like
Mm,
you didn't suffer enough, you didn't do enough,
right.
you weren't um, type A enough, or
Mm-hmm.
you didn't prioritize or time manage.
Mm-hmm.
And it's easy for everyone else to, and they mean well, but to say, hey, it's about time management, like you can't have everything, and are you going to do this or this today, are you going to,
Mm-hmm.
but like, um, ultimately I did try my best. Kind of I engineered this whole thing
Mm-hmm.
and took advantage of the situations where someone else might be like, I'm not gonna
Right.
go
I'm
to
gonna do
another
that the
place.
year that I go to
Yeah,
Korea. And
like
yeah,
I'm not
yeah.
gonna. So I swam in all these places. I met all these people, and I pretty much did prioritize swimming over other stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And now it's coming crashing down because I do need to do work, put raise the lever up a little bit on stuff like my master's project and
Mm-hmm.
things like that. But the thing that I was most on my mind was swimming because it was the most enjoyable, frankly.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
it comes back down to kind of, I don't want to calculate this, especially not the swim, because I'm out there to, first of all, it's a privilege and it's
Yeah.
a choice and I paid for it. And it's just kind of like, I'm gonna, I don't see myself quitting. I never did. So that's
Mm-hmm.
one thing I have on my side
Yeah.
because I don't see myself quitting
Mm-hmm.
because there's no reason. I'll just go through it,
Mm-hmm.
I got the time model from Rondi and it's really gonna be like a 10.5 hour swim. And I think there's some wiggle room built in there because she's really a genius of modeling. And I think she knows that there needs to be some sort of like give in the schedule, I
Mm-hmm.
think. And I didn't even ask her because I was like, what's the point? Because she's a genius and she calculated this. It's not like she can change the tides at this point. Like this is just gonna happen to me
Mm-hmm.
and I'm gonna go through it. So but I thought about, I don't know how to phrase this, but when I was having those dark thoughts, um, I thought about kind of like why I swim.
Mm-hmm.
And the real core of it is to stop time.
Yeah.
Because, and I never thought of it that way, you know? I hate the passing of time. I'm afraid of aging. I'm always putting off thoughts of the fact that we're all going to die. Like, um, yeah. And once I realized that, I was like, well, you're going to get it. Like, you're going to get to stop time and all this other noise. And you only have to do one thing.
Yeah.
There's just, for God's sake, like, you only have to do one thing for a
Yeah.
little. And,
And I heard you say you like that one thing too, which
yeah,
is a huge bonus. Is to
yeah,
reflect back on that
yeah,
time. Like I love being in the water. And
yeah.
sometimes it's good to just remind yourself that in the middle of like, but I love this.
Yeah, and then I started getting even prematurely sad about it, which is also not normal and it's unproductive. But I started thinking, I already feel like it's set in motion.
Interesting.
Um, as the clock starts ticking down,
Mm-hmm.
it's like it's the event is already happening. You know
Yeah.
what I'm saying? Because it's already starting to be over. Yeah. So that made me feel a lot more whole about the
Mhm.
experience and connected. Because people would say, even up till 3 weeks ago, like, how are you feeling? And I didn't feel anything, almost in denial of like, I just signed up for this really 2 years ago. And now I'm starting to definitely have feelings. And so that negative stuff, all that, I'm glad that happened to me because it was kind of like, I realized I have to really meditate on some stuff going into
Mhm.
this.
Mhm.
Whereas I thought I didn't because I was a little disassociated.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, and a part of it is being far away and
Yeah.
having been far away from the time that I signed up for this and whatever. So I'm starting to connect more and try to manage these um, feelings
Mhm.
and thoughts. Yeah, that's kind of
Exciting.
where I'm at. It's a little intense, but yeah.
Yeah. So with less than 2 weeks left and then travel day, what do you have in store? Anything? Or are you on your taper or just
Mhm.
gonna do what you can or walk or run or what?
Well, one thing is, I found a pool yesterday,
Awesome.
which is I went to some other out of the way place and then came back and I don't know if I smelled chlorine or but I saw a sign and it was really an advertisement. So a lot of places are closed, but I went downstairs and I, I heard them saying they were like, oh well, you have to purchase a month, um, even if I only have half a month or and it just all went, I was like, yes, yes, I'll do it. Because there's no other, it's in a convenient spot. And
Mhm.
I don't even really know what I paid because I was like, I'm gonna do this. And normally I'm not like that. Of course
Mhm.
I'll realize I'm not in the financial condition to just be like, oh, I don't care how much it costs, but I don't at this point because um, what a relief because I'm supposed to be tapering, but I also thought today as I was swimming, there is a probably my biggest year was 2017. And I did Bridget Hobart's 10.5 mile Seneca Lake swim immediately the week before the 12-mile swim around Charleston.
Mm.
And that felt like the lake swim really prepared me.
Yeah.
Um, so there's no real rhyme or reason. And I was like, I need to be in the water.
Yeah.
Whereas maybe some people might not. I don't know. People have different ways of tapering,
Absolutely. Yeah.
but I had gotten to a point where I'm like, it's not okay. It's not okay to not be in water for the last 2+ weeks before this
Yeah.
swim. Not okay. And thank goodness I found this pool
Yeah, it's
because when
great.
I started swimming, I don't know if it's that it's hot out or maybe I need to concentrate on hydrating more, but I just felt like not cramped, but sore and but it reminded me of when I did stage 4.
Mhm.
Afterwards, I asked Ed Riley, who I met on that swim, and I said, "Do you ever feel like right when you jump in, you just already feel sore?" And he was like, "All the time." So I remembered that, and I pushed past it a little bit. I'm
Yeah.
talking like 100 yards, and then I felt okay.
Yeah.
But that indicated to me like, yeah, you really needed to make sure to find some way to be in water. So I'm
It's a
really,
good idea.
really
Yeah.
lucky. Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm so lucky I found that pool because I couldn't have found one if I tried at this
Right.
point because a
Yeah.
lot of things have shut down.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think sleep, getting that was my big thing before Tahoe, was like trying to find a way to sleep as much as I could.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I've had, I guess, going back to the water, lack of water comment, I had a year where I had 1 month before in search of memory, I ruptured my eardrum. I wasn't able to get in the water. They
How did that
recommended
come
staying
about?
out. What's that? How did it come
How did
about?
that, yeah.
It was just like a summer cold that like turned, that gone wrong. Um, yeah. So, yeah, just like the congestion just ended up
Uh-huh.
rupturing my eardrum. So a friend of mine had a Vasa that they passed on. So I was able to like at least do swimming motions, but it wasn't the same as being in the water. Like I think after 2 weeks, I got some good earplugs and I just to touch the water. But I guess one thing I think this year was interesting, just in that kind of like the recovery thing, is like after Tahoe, I had like last 12 days before
Mhm.
Border Buster, and I I didn't have a chance to get in the water just between traveling and
Yeah.
just the
Yeah.
way everything was panning out for me, which is my point being that when I got into Border Buster, I felt okay for a little while, but I got tight so fast and it was so uncomfortable. And
Um,
then I like I didn't feel like I could ever, like I ended up getting through and being fine. But it was
yeah.
just interesting how I really felt like, oh God, I wish I would have just stretched out a couple times between. And I didn't do much of anything. Anyway. So I think being in the water, being able to touch the water, feel the water, and focusing on, keeping that arm under your body so your shoulders aren't
Yeah.
hurting. But I wouldn't do distance so much now, so much as just
Right.
whatever feels good, and then trying to rest your
Yeah.
body.
Yeah. Speaking of priorities, competing priorities and stuff for eating, I think maybe I slept 5 hours the night before. That's pretty good. And then I took a quick nap before this, and I could swim from 6 a.m. to like 8 a.m. or something, and then head to a cousin's place to visit. And then we're going to go to the seaside up here for the first time for me. Um, or I could just be like, I'll swim when I get there. But then I'm thinking about stuff like, but I
Yeah.
paid, and I never regret going in the water, which is also true.
Right.
But I think maybe I'll sleep.
It's a good
You know
idea.
what I mean?
I do.
Because I when you get that raw feeling
Yes.
where like your insides are rubbing around on each
Yeah.
other,
Yeah.
you know what I mean?
That
Like
totally exhausted.
it feels
Yeah.
like your
You feel
cells
the
are
back of your eyeballs burning.
yeah, like you feel like your cells are burning, or sometimes that your eyes are so inculcated to being open that you can't even shut them.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's kind of how I've gotten to feeling, and it's not um, just because just because even if I swim, went in swim laps, I would feel good. I'd end up feeling good,
Feel great.
both
Yep.
mentally and physically, but somewhere it's not ideal for the body at this point.
Yeah.
Kind of like playing with fire. Like maybe I
Yeah.
could get away with it. Also, I got really tight a couple of days ago. Just my back was feeling like, and so I thought I need yoga now. But when I started doing it, my nerves are firing. It didn't feel good, so I was like, just stop,
Yeah.
right? Like, don't have this idea in your head like I must do this tonight. And funny thing, the next day I tried, the very next day, and it was fine. And then
Yeah.
it was productive to do yoga.
Yeah.
So just I don't know, like listening to the body is something people say, but I'm starting to just really like at this point it's a hard line to manage, right? Because it's like you need to push yourself, but you also need to know when you're not being productive after all, right?
Right. Absolutely.
It's
Hearing. I
hard
think,
to
yeah, there's listening to your body and then there's hearing it. If that's to be
yeah,
distinguished.
I heard my body be
That's
like,
good.
what are you doing? And I would have pushed, the old me would have just pushed
Yeah.
through.
Yeah.
But then I was like, what if I pull my back or do
Yeah.
something weird? because
Yeah.
that
Or
can last.
the other thing with not getting enough rest is like like you don't want to get sick at this point either. So like,
That's true
like
too.
your immune system kind of goes lower when that's how I feel too. I'm like pump up on vitamin C and stuff leading into especially travel.
That's
Rest
a
as
really
much
good
as you
point.
can.
I didn't even think about that.
It's real. It's really
Oh
happening
gosh.
everywhere. So yeah. Well, you need to take care of yourself and hear your body talking.
Yeah, yeah. And thanks, because I feel like I've been just motor mouthing through this whole thing, but
All good.
uh, I had a lot to. I'm thankful for this series because from my end, it's like a very therapeutic. I don't know what it's going to be like for people listening, um, especially what I said about like these complicated feelings about
I think we
not
all
not.
have them. I think even people who, I don't know, I think we all have them. And I feel like it gets worse and worse and worse going into the being there. I remember asking Cindy, like right before we're about to touch down, I'm like, all I have to do is swim, right? And she's like, yeah. I'm like, okay. Like, it's just like, I need someone to remind me, like, that's all you have
Mm,
to do. But it just like that, I don't know, like I felt
yeah,
seemingly fine, but it's like it builds and builds and builds. And then you're just
yeah,
like, oh, what am I doing? What was I thinking? Why is this a good idea? What are people going to think? And at the end of the day, it doesn't matter. You're
yeah,
doing it for you. I think that's probably the most important thing to remember.
yeah. And that part of me that makes me look really small, but I decided to just show that part of me because that's like a very important thing to just face, which is what I said about like in relation to others, how, and I don't know if this is true of other people because it's not like even if I ask people point blank, do you have these feelings too? They don't have to share that they do, which is that feeling of like if someone, when you're rooting for somebody, but then they don't make it, it's
Yeah.
not that you're pleased, but it's kind of like retrospectively analyzing it and just calibrating it to selfishly towards your own chances of, you know what I mean, or
Mm-hmm.
just being like where did they go wrong, and just kind of like the herd mentality, right, of like if um yeah, I don't know exactly what I'm trying to say, but maybe some people will, maybe it'll resound with some people, and with others they'll be like wow, Gia's like a bit.
I
I
yeah.
don't.
I feel like I know what you're I know what you mean, I feel like, but I don't know uh but yeah, but I guess at the end of the day, it's not productive for me to try to think what someone else would think if I didn't finish. So I just put that
Right.
all out of my
And
head.
people aren't thinking it. I can almost guarantee, I know after working through those thoughts, absolutely no one is doing that.
Yeah,
And I'm lucky because I have so many people who are actually supporting me instead of actively discouraging me, which is what others might do and just be like, you can't. But maybe that's just that voice, you know? Maybe I am prepared. It's just very strange,
it is a
you know? Yeah.
strange endeavor that we all put ourselves in this situation on purpose. Can you believe it?
It's a little extreme, and that's sinking in, right, like the enormity of
Yes,
what I'm trying to do, because it's easy to get your perspective skewed, and I've heard people say, oh, Manhattan's easy, and Rodney makes it so that you'll definitely finish, and it just sounds like it makes it, it's like this is not easy.
it's not. Well, it's not
It-
done until it's done. So you still
yeah,
got to
and
go out
it
there
is
and do it.
not going to be easy. Like it's
Nope.
going to be a huge, big deal, especially for me, like being a slower swimmer who's kind of like a hobbyist who went too far. Um, yeah, like it's going to
It's
be,
okay. It's
yeah.
okay. You're gonna do
Thank you.
great.
Thank you.
I can't wait to find out.
Yeah,
Well, I
I
wish
know.
you. Well, I feel like you're going to talk yourself out of it before anything else.
Yeah,
So don't talk yourself out of it. But I
I
think you're
just
on the
laugh
right track.
because it does feel like a coin toss, and I think that's what provoked. But I won't be quitting, so, and that's the one consistent thing.
That's good.
Um,
It's a good
yeah, so
place
we'll
to
see.
start.
We'll see what happens, but either way, I'll be thankful. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. That's
Yeah.
awesome. Well, good luck on
So,
August 22nd. Well, first of all, safe travels and enjoy your local pool. and maybe the
Mhm.
seaside and whatever else you get up to for your last few 12 days in Korea. That's
Thank you
awesome.
so much.
I hope you enjoyed today's interview. Do you want to take marathon swim stories with you? Subscribe on your favorite podcast provider. Want to connect with like-minded limit pushers? Join us for Marathon Swim Stories live on Tuesdays at 5:30 a.m. Pacific, 8:30 Eastern, 13:30 GMT. Thanks for watching.